This is a Bugaboo Cameleon 2, and today we're going to try to do a complete brake guide. So we're going to show you how to disassemble all of the elements related to the brakes with an idea towards lubricating them, fixing them, replacing defective parts. Now we are doing this on the Cameleon 2. We have a separate guide for the Cameleon 3. Cameleon 1 functions very similarly to the Cameleon 2. There are a couple changes on Cameleon 3, but nothing very major. So the process is going to be very similar in these. Now, while the process is similar, the parts are not. So these have been redesigned for every generation of Bugaboo Cameleon. You are not going to be able to use a lever from a different generation, for example, on a different generation. Same goes for the brake wire. It's a different length in all cases, and it's formed a little bit different on the Cameleon 3. The brake shoes are likewise very different. Cameleon 1 and 2 brake shoes to some extent can be used together, but actually they've both been on, around for so long now that they would generally be worn down. It's better to stick to the same generation. Okay, I'm going to start with a disassembly of the lever. This is going to be necessary either for replacing elements of the lever itself. This would be when it's not clicking into the various positions and holding, or if you want to remove the actual brake wire, or if the brake wire is rusted inside and it's hard to pull on, and you want to do a sort of temporary fix other than replacing the brake wire by lubricating down inside that wire. In all these cases, you would need to remove the brake lever itself. In order to do this, there are two screws here and here, and you just want to unscrew them. There we go. Okay, now you're going to pull apart this back panel, hold the lever, and just pop it off like this. You might as well remove this little metal piece while you're at it so that you don't lose it. Then you can pull the rest of the brake lever out, like this, and detach the wire from the bottom of that assembly. And then it's just loose. So the brake lever comes in two parts, with a gear teeth sort of system holding them together, and a spring here. And one that's depressed pulls this outer set of teeth away from these here. Sometimes you can get a lot of dirt and stuff here, or these can become a little bit worn down, at which point the lever will not hold properly in various sorts of positions. You should examine both this piece then and this piece for damage, and if they're not damaged, if they are, you switch them out. If not, clean them up a bit and then use a little bit of silicone spray on both pieces. Same goes for the inside here. If you get crud or these plastic teeth get damaged, then the button can get kind of caught inside and it won't spring back out into place against the outer gear teeth. So clean that out, examine it for damage of course, and then also use a little bit of silicone spray. And then you can put it back together. Now if you have trouble with rust within the brake wire, the ideal thing to do about this is to replace the brake wire. But if you need a shorter fix, you can use something like WD-40. Use that little straw attachment and spray into the top in small bursts and allow it to run down inside. This will not only lubricate the wire against the housing on the outside, but because WD-40 also has some solvent properties, it will help to loosen that rust up a bit so that the wire will function properly again. I would also recommend this as a part of maintenance of this system. Okay. Now, in order to replace the entire lever, you would need to pull the head of this wire off of the lever itself there. And then you need to start detaching the wire from the outside of the chassis. Okay, the wire is attached to the chassis at 2 points before we get down to the bottom end. It's both 2 of these clips. This one is actually loose, the one at the top. You can see that it bubbles out at one point in order to fit over the wire. If you push it out like that, you can just pop the entire thing off. The other one is actually riveted in place, and the easiest way to remove the wire from this is to slide the wire down until you get to that little metal head, and then use a flathead screwdriver to pry it up a little bit, pull it until the inner part of the wire is down through there, and then just pop it off like that. When you get to the bottom side then, you'll need to, of course, remove the wheel itself. And we'll have a look at the bottom brake assembly. Okay, the bottom part of the brake assembly consists of a few parts. Up here is an adjustment screw. If you're finding that your brakes are too loose or too tight, you can first try to adjust them here. So pull it out like this. You'll see that the screw runs along the outside of the wire. It has this little nut on it. And when you pull that nut down like this, you make the brakes tighter. And if you pull it up, assuming there is room to go further up, then you make the brakes looser. So again, if the brakes are too loose, it means that the wheels are not braking enough. You put on the brakes, and instead of braking, it just moves a bit and makes like a rattly sort of a sound. On the other hand, if the brakes are too tight, it means that the brake shoe is coming in contact with the teeth on the inside of the wheel, and also making a sound, and probably making it unpleasant in order to drive. If you want to remove this, then you can pull that adjustment screw all the way up, and then it just slides right out of this little part here. By pulling the wire down like this, you can pop it out like that. There's a slot on the inside of this brake shoe where that pops into. Okay, looking at the rest of the brake assembly then. The brakes are spring activated down below here on Cameleon 1 and 2, and you can detach the spring by unscrewing this screw here. There is a lock washer on the inside of the chassis, or the inside facing side of the chassis. There it is, so don't lose that. And you can pull this out. This is a screw, and it has a little metal sleeve, and there is also usually a washer. There it is, it fell inside. A washer that sits right on the top there. You can now detach the spring as well, and that gives you a little bit more movement with relation to the brake shoe. Removing the other wheel will of course give you more movement as well, as the 2 brake shoes are on a bar, and it's coming in contact with the wheel as it is now. Okay, I'm going to remove the other wheel. Now the brake shoes. If you have trouble with the brake shoes, this will generally be that either this top green element, they've changed the color over the various generations, but it's in 2 parts, that this has either fallen off or it's worn down. These teeth are no longer catching on the inside of the wheel, and for all of these reasons, you might need to replace the brake shoe. These are side specific, and of course the one side has the extra little thing for connecting to the spring. So, in order to remove these brake shoes, look at the back side of the chassis. You just need to take off this screw. There's one on either side. And then you can pull off the brake shoes. If they're a little hard to get out, you just want to use a flathead screwdriver in order to pry them out. They kind of get stuck in there after a while. And it's not a bad idea to use a little bit of silicone spray when you put it back, so that it's easier to pull it out in the future. Now you can just replace that brake shoe. Another thing that can happen with the brake shoe setup is that this bar can get bent. When that gets bent, it means that both brake shoes don't come into contact with the wheels at exactly the same time. In addition, it can put stress on the rest of the chassis. which can eventually lead to damage in other areas like the central locking mechanism, and also just make the stroller feel a little bit uneven. So if you need to replace this bar, you need to remove the brake shoe on one side and both screws, and then you can actually just slide out the entire piece like that, and then shift out the bar. Okay. I am now going to reassemble everything. So slotting this bar back in. Sometimes people have trouble also where, so this happened a lot with Cameleon 1, where the wheel on the opposite side from the brake wire would no longer brake. And this also has to do generally with just over time stress being put on these brake shoes and how they, like the angle at which they meet both wheels at the same time. So if you're having trouble with that, if you have a Cameleon 1 in particular, where one wheel doesn't brake, it can be problems with this bar or with the brake shoes. It can also be problems with the axle on the back wheel themselves. If they're bent, then those teeth on the inside of the wheel don't line up properly with the brake shoe. Okay. Reassembly then of the lower end. Okay, I'm going to start by inserting this wire here, adjusting the screw all the way as loose as possible so I can tighten it later if I need to, popping it in place. Then I'm going to fit the head of this brake wire right into the slot on the inside of the brake shoe and pull the wire into the groove, and then I can feed some of it in there. Okay, then slide this spring back into place, and then we'll screw it in. So while it can sometimes be necessary to replace any of these elements, the most common of these elements needing replacement is the wire itself, of course. We have another video that shows you, it's a bit of an older video, but it shows you how to replace the wire using generic parts. Otherwise, you can order wires online. There's various places. The Cameleon 3 brake wire kit, the one they sell as the brake kit, will not fit on to the 2 or the 1, unfortunately. There's that little locking nut, don't forget about that. But you can get it other places online. You can make it yourself from generic parts. You could also, if you have like a bicycle repair shop in the area, you can remove the entire wire system and take it to a bicycle repair shop, and they can put one together for you. What's going to be really important is the length in particular of the inner wire versus the outer housing. And then of course making sure that you have that adjustment screw in place. Okay, that is now in order. Move our way up the chassis. Gonna again just slot the inner part of the brake wire under here. And that will allow me then to pull that through. Okay, this other piece, you just feed the brake wire into where it's supposed to slot, and then it all just sort of snaps into place, and you can always, of course, adjust where it is later. Okay, the first thing you're going to want to do when reassembling the top part of this brake system is to pull this piece up so that it more or less lines up, or it does line up with this hole that's cut on the inside of this bar. And then you're going to want to replace this piece. You're going to take the part that has this cutout on the lip, and that's going to go on the bottom. That's a little open space that's cut out there is going to go around the wire that's a part of the central fold on the inside there. So you just want to put this in place, slide the top part of the lip under first, and then slot it in. And you are going to want to check that the central fold works on this side afterwards, because it is possible for these parts to be slightly out of alignment. The next thing you're going to want to do is to reinsert the wire into the lever. So the circular part goes right into the little circular notch. Takes a little bit of effort to press it in. we go. It needs to slide in enough so that that wire can slot down into that groove. Then you'll take your spring, stick it in, and then your button, and then just find the point at which those teeth line up. And now you're gonna have to hold the whole thing together, slotting this wire in first through the bottom element. And just pop it all into place like that. You can then do, again, a check of this alignment. And then you're going to slot this in so that these two little wings slot in right here under the top part of that white element. It should kind of go automatically as you line everything up. Click it all in place, and then reattach these screws. So that was the full disassembly of all the elements related to the brakes on the Cameleon 2. As I said, it's very similar on Cameleon 1 and Cameleon 3, in particular Cameleon 1, but 3 is also very similar, although all the parts are not compatible between the generations. We tried to cover all the problems I could think of related to the brake system. If you have any problems with the brake system that are not covered in this video, we would love to hear a comment below so that we can make a video that solves your problem. In any case, we hope that somebody out there found this video helpful, and if you did, we ask that you subscribe, as it helps us to continue making videos in the future. Thank you.